Hello, everyone. This is Steve Gay, and I'm team leader for performance management and asset management at FHWA. FHWA is a proud sponsor of this TAM Guide book club in the TAM webinar series in cooperation with ASHTO. And to all of you joining us on the line, welcome to this 7th installment of the TAM Guide book club. Our topic today is increasing capacity. And the next topic, next Wednesday, will be investment strategies and multi-objective decision analysis. If you want to register for our regular TAM webinars or to catch up on any of the past webinars, just visit the ASHTO TAM portal. That is TAM-portal-dot.com and click TAM webinars. Under events is the main menu. And you can register for the upcoming book club meeting and for future TAM webinars as they are announced. On the same page, you will also find an archive of previous webinars as well. Links to videos and slides from today's meeting will also be posted on that website. And you'll also find the winner of last week's webinar quest, Group 3. Congratulations to Group 3. Now I'll make one more plug for the TAM Guide. It's available at tamguide.com as well as from the ASHTO bookstore. If I didn't say that, I would owe Matt at least one. And finally, if you have any questions at all during today's webinar, please use the webinar's chat feature. We'll have time for open discussion towards the end of today's session. And I'm sorry that I was not able to make it to last week's session. But we'll dive right into the session today on increasing workforce capacity. This session will help introduce you to a topic that really touches every aspect of asset management. It's also an area where the ASHTO TAM Guide can be a great resource to help you advance TAM at your agency. You know, is it in your own team, breaking down the silos, talking to the pavement bridge guys, the planners, so they understand some of the issues you're dealing with. Our big issue we're dealing with in planning in Federal Highway is a new onboarding initiative, as we have a number of new people coming on board. And how do you address those kind of issues? On our agenda today, we'll hear from two guest speakers who will share their perspectives on TAM and workforce capacity building at their agencies. I'm looking forward to hearing from many of you on the line who are using the TAM Guide to support strong asset management. We hope that this interactive book club format in today's slightly updated breakout group format will really help all of us joining today to learn from one another, as well as dig deeper into the TAM Guide. You know, that was one of the objectives when Matt and I were sitting down on the book club, is how to get to use it and get others in your agency to get to use it. I think it's been a good goal. I think you're going to enjoy today's session, and I hope you'll learn a lot from each other this afternoon. And finally, the topic of next week's webinar, a reminder: investment strategies in multi-objective decision analysis. I really hope that you will join us again next Wednesday, June 9th, for that session. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Hannah Groshong of the Spy Pond Partners, who's going to lead us through our agenda and objectives for today's session. Hannah?
Hi, Steve. Actually, it's Yana who's going to do the agenda.
Oh, okay.
And then Hannah's going to take over. So I just wanted to point out that our two speakers will be Tammy Haas from New Mexico DOT and Matt Haubrich from Iowa DOT. And that the quest that we're going to have today is going to be flipped around for those of you who've been participating. So we're going to start with providing you where in the guide are the answers to the questions, but then we want you to focus the breakout session on discussing the question and sharing your experiences with your organizations and discussing what may be more useful in the future as resources that would help you with workforce capacity building. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hannah.
Thanks, Yana. So we're going to start with a few Menti polls as we've done in the last few webinars. So here's the code for the Menti, and we will start with just getting some of your feedback on workforce issues that you might be dealing with and organizational aspects. So the first question is, where is your agency's home for asset management? Does asset management live in the executive office, the planning office, maybe engineering or maintenance and operations, or maybe it's another? And if it's somewhere else, definitely let us know in the comments in the chat function. We'd love to kind of hear where your asset management office might live. It looks like majority, at least for now, is the planning office. Have several in the engineering office as well as maintenance and operations. All right, settling right around 50% of a little bit more in the planning office. All right, our next question is whether or not TAM responsibilities in your agency are centralized or decentralized. So I think with this, we were wondering if you had more of a central office role for TAM, or if asset management was more in your field offices or district offices. Maybe it's both. We should have had that as an answer, or maybe other as well. Looks like most are pretty centralized responsibilities, but several decentralized as well. All right, let's go to the next question. Is it challenging for you to find staff with the right skills to perform TAM roles? So this is a yes or no. We're imagining that this might be fairly challenging, but definitely want to know if you do, are very easily able to find the right skills. That's something we'd be interested to know as well. So it looks like, as we expect, that there are some challenges with finding the right skills to fill positions in TAM roles and responsibilities. All right, I think we have one more question for everyone. The question is, how are you working to increase your staff TAM capabilities? So there's various ways that the guide mentions. So these are kind of here. We have training, information sharing, peer-to-peer learning, maybe supplementing with various consultant capabilities, or other. So we definitely are curious to know how you are increasing your staff TAM capabilities. And it kind of looks like a good smattering across the board. And I think that's what we'll see, is that, it takes a lot of different ways to increase those capabilities. Using different formats to do that and methods can be really beneficial. All right. I will go ahead and switch back to our presentation here. All right, so thank you so much for those answers. I think that's really interesting to see everyone's responses. Workforce and increasing your workforce capabilities is definitely a huge topic. And the TAM guide, specifically chapter 3 of the TAM guide, really does highlight some of these organizational and workforce challenges related to asset management. So in a few quick slides, I just wanted to cover some of those highlights and really review those briefly here. So the chapter 3 really starts with a section on establishing TAM roles, responsibilities, and competencies. So, the first step in that is obviously creating your TAM unit and determining the home for TAM within your organization. So in this section, there's a map that shows where TAM is located within an agency at different DOTs across the country. And, it kind of looked really similar to the question that we asked. So it really shows that there's a lot of different ways to do it, different areas where you could place TAM in your organization. Likewise, this section discusses what responsibilities you might want to have centralized versus decentralized, perhaps at a field office or a district office. And then once you have that TAM unit established, the guide provides some information specifically on TAM roles and building a strong TAM team. It really does involve a wide range of people, analysts, managers, executive support. And this section really covers that broad range of people and skills that you might want to have on your team doing asset management. So then finally, this section has a whole list of key TAM competencies as well as suggestions for developing those, peer-to-peer learning, training tools, various information sharing methods. And also there's a how-to guide that covers recruiting individuals for specific TAM roles. So that could be of interest if you are looking to add more people to your team. So the second section in chapter 3 covers key coordination and communication aspects. So internally, there's perhaps a coordination that's needed with various steering committees. Data governance groups are pretty key as well. And then externally, a big part of TAM is coordinating with MPOs, local agencies, these other groups that are maybe providing data or even involved in maintaining or managing assets. So there's some information and best practices in the guide on this as well. There's also a table of various communication methods. This might be helpful if you're trying to figure out the best way to get information on TAM to various stakeholders. So definitely something to check out there too. And then the final section in chapter 3 it covers change management. It kind of highlights some big picture change management things. And really with this, we want to acknowledge that continued advancement in TAM certainly involves organizational change, can involve culture shifts, and these can be really challenging. It's helpful to have these sort of change agents that really help guide the agency through the process of change. There's a couple helpful resources on this topic I wanted to point out. One is a checklist, and this is titled Assessing an Organization's TAM Readiness. So this really covers how responsive your agency has been to change in the past and how you might prepare the organization for upcoming changes given challenges that you might have encountered sort of in the past. And then there's also a more specific how-to guide on managing change and specifically preparing for system replacement. If that's something that you're planning to do or are in the midst of as part of your TAM development, this how-to guide kind of helps to ensure that smooth transition there. All right, so then the last thing I wanted to mention and touch on is the capability building portal. And this is separate from the TAM guide itself, but another set of resources that was developed through an NCHRP project. And it's really intended to be a one-stop shop for information and tools and resources specifically related to workforce and other transportation organizational needs. So this is really another great place to go for this kind of workforce and capacity building type of information. So the guidance in this portal is organized into scenarios, so you can potentially find information on similar situations you might be dealing with in your organizations. And there's also a library of position descriptions that could give you a really good place to start if you're trying to find new talent for your organization for example. I did want to point out, there is specific information on kind of the workforce evolution and the changes that are occurring in today's demographics and workforce preferences. And it also covers more specific workforce management techniques. So it goes into a bit more depth than the TAM guide might. And all of these workforce management type of things and other strategies can definitely be applied to asset management contexts. They're very much work in coordination. So like I said, this is just another added set of resources that could be really useful for you in addition to the TAM guide. All right, so we'll turn it over to our two speakers. So we'll hear first from Tammy Haas of New Mexico and Matt Haubrich of Iowa DOT. And they're going to share some information and insights on how they are advancing TAM practice and building and workforce capabilities. So first up, we have Tammy.
Thank you, Hannah. Good afternoon, everybody. As I was asked to present New Mexico DOT's case study today, I look back at the past 20 or so years on our department's history. It's filled with some ups and downs since we first started this journey into building transportation asset management capabilities within our first attempt at doing management systems. With changes in leadership, there can be setbacks along the way. Everything slowed down and we kind of abandoned what we had started. Then in 2013, a new TAM and strategic planning division was created, and I was a lucky person put in charge of that new division. Our first focus was on getting good data, and then we implemented a new configuration to our pavement management system, followed by implementation of a new maintenance management system. We started to engage a broad spectrum of staff within our agency to create our 2018 and our 2019 TAMs. And then we started to build our integrated tool that we call our Aegis system. Next slide, please. We learned that one of the important elements for us is building knowledge and capabilities of our staff, and really building those capabilities around TAM. This includes developing our understanding of the key elements in transportation asset management. As we build the knowledge, we realize how much more we need to know. In order for us to have asset inventory and condition for our bridges and pavements, our staff need to understand how asset data is collected and the forms that we get our data in. We also need to understand that the management systems that we put our data in, we really need to get a better understanding of those management systems in and how they work and how the predictive capabilities work. In the beginning, you do not know what you do not understand. And I think throughout this, it's just been a big learning curve as we have moved forward in these past 8 years. Once you start getting an understanding of the TAM elements, it's easy to get frustrated when you realize how much more you need to understand. The sheer volume of it all can really be debilitating and daunting at times. And I think it's one of those things is just, you got to keep plugging away. So as we master specific elements of transportation asset management, the focus is making what is needed be sustainable well into the future. If we move to the next slide. So the big question, how do we build a sustainable TAM organization? In one of our workshops, we kind of rephrase that to be, how do we get TAM to transcend changes in leadership or other staff, whether it's the leader of your asset management program or whether you have a change in who's doing your pavement management system. It's important to work on getting more people interested in TAM across the organization. We focus first on our own executives as well as the district engineers, because the way that we have our organization set up, when district engineers are putting together their projects, if we don't get their buy-in and support on it, we're really looking at those people to be the conduit to really move our asset management program forward. And once they realize how important asset management is to the agency, then they can help foster it down to all of their staffs as we look forward. We've also made contact with individuals across the organization to promote transportation asset management and tell them about the advancements that are available and how it might help them with their job. As I mentioned briefly, our Aegis system contains a lot of good information that can be used by the engineers that are creating the projects, doing the project development, doing the design and construction types of duties. So we're trying to look at the information that we put together that also can be used for other purposes besides TAM. So we try to encourage those that show some sort of interest in what we're doing and assess the aptitude, because we want to make sure that we provide additional opportunities for them to do more with transportation asset management and hopefully want to come join our team. I think the biggest, most important thing that we can do is communicating. It is the most important ingredient for building a strong organization and workforce, not only for asset management, but just the agency in general. In asset management, and especially with our pavement management group, we've had to deal with staff turnover. We realize it's probably going to be one of those ongoing issues. So we've developed an attitude that turnover is expected and that we need to be ready for it. So how do we get ready? We make sure that we're exposing our staff to a lot of different things and making sure that we do some cross training of our staff so that we're ready in case somebody decides to move on in their career. We are building tools, visualizations, and reports that will also help people with their jobs and to understand asset management, kind of what we do in our area, but what information that we have that can also have them. For our asset management, we do have an asset management executive steering committee that guides our asset management program, as well as serving as a conduit to help us with continuing to communicate our asset management principles across the agency. One of the things I've personally been doing is encouraging staff to engage in national activities so that they can learn to more about asset management and build more of a peer community, kind of like what we're going to be doing here today with this book club, because we're learning from our peers. That's where I got most of my knowledge, from peers, consultants in the past 8 years. It's one of the things that we know is not being taught in school. So I hope that what I shared today makes you guys feel like you're not alone in this journey. I think we're all looking at how do we build a sustainable TAM organization. So with that, thank you, Hannah, and we'll turn it over. Thanks.
Thanks, Tammy. That was a great summary of some of the stuff you guys are doing. Really appreciate it. All right, next we have Matt Haubrich at Iowa DOT.
Yeah, hi everyone. Want to just take a little time. Tammy did a great overview of kind of some of the big picture issues. I'm going to do a little bit of a dive into a specific area, and not to say that we've necessarily got this all figured out, but just to give you an example of kind of how we've been probing at this area of pavement management as one of our critical assets, and kind of looking at this to help us think about what we might want to do to improve how we do pavement management. So we came up with this idea of developing what we call our pavement management strategic plan. And it's not about how we manage pavements, it's about how we get better at managing pavements. So this is really intended to kind of help us move forward and improve what we do. So to start with, we started with this idea of where are we? And that really came together through a workshop that we did. By the way, we have some great consultant support helping us along the way on this project because we are very thinly staffed in pavement management. To be honest with you, we have a kind of a loose confederation of people, of individuals who have responsibilities related to pavement management. We don't have a central pavement management unit per se, or at least not one that's staffed with full-time folks. We do have someone whose title is pavement management, but also that same individual's title is also payment design, and they also lead our laboratory function with respect to payment analysis. So there's a lot on that person's plate in addition to just payment management. We don't have a person dedicated to payment management. And so that's something that we've identified as a weakness. And as we are looking at trying to put a little bit more emphasis on payment management, identifying what are the areas that we have as current strengths and weaknesses, pulling together a large group of people from across our department to help provide input and help us understand, what would payment management look like if we were really doing it as well as we would like to be. And that resulted in a white paper that is really laying out a sketch of a plan to how we're going to achieve that vision. The next slide, please. And that white paper described really three major strategic plan components that are under development still today. And the first of those is really the strategic plan, the strategic component of the plan. Kind of as you look at this, we've got these three components, and it's kind of describing what are the components, who's the audience for it, and then at the bottom it's sort of laying out what the content is really about. And so that first strategic component is aimed at really all levels of the Iowa DOT, and it's meant to be kind of a quick read document that really lays out what's our business case, what are the efforts that we've had to date, what's our vision and mission, and what's the overview of the rest of the plan. And it really describes where we are and kind of where we're going. The second component is what we call our programmatic plan. And that's getting into a little bit more detail about maybe what are some organizational structures that might make sense for us to better manage our pavements. What are some of the needs and gaps? What are the actions that are going to be recommended, and on what kind of a time frame? And the audience there is really for the DOT leadership and for our asset management implementation team, which is a cross-functional team supporting asset management implementation across the department, to really get at this where are we going question that was first raised in the strategic plan, but in more detail in the programmatic plan. And then the last component is this tactical or implementation plan that is going to get more into detail on some of the actions and tasks to help us improve how we do payment management. And that's going to be really on the staff that are focused on payment management, as well as the payment management technical committee, the PMTC that's referenced there. And I apologize for a few of the acronyms here. I probably should have spelled some of those out a little bit more in the slide, but that this is kind of gives you the overview of where this document is, the suite of documents is heading, and as it's coming all together now. Next slide, please. So we've identified some big needs. We need a champion. We need somebody to really be waking up every day, and payment management's their job. We really need to have a dedicated unit with appropriate staffing to be successful. We need better documentation. We need more reliable information, or we want people to have confidence in the data. That's one of the issues that we've had is because we don't really have a strong unit that's really leading this effort, that sometimes we put out data and then we sort of find, oops, we had a mistake, and then people lose confidence in that data. And that confidence is so critical, because what we want is people to be making decisions using data. And if they don't have confidence in the data, then they're going to disregard it and just make decisions based on other factors. And that's not really what we want. So we need that confidence there, and we need to be able to have highly reliable information for folks to make those data-driven decisions. And honestly, we really need a lot of training too. We have a big gap there with existing staff. Next slide, please. So some of the practice areas that we've identified as we get into that execution plan, that sort of third component, are focused around these areas like policy, communication, organization, education, lifecycle planning, technology, research support. How do we continuously improve? How do we look at data collection? We've identified over 65 different discrete tasks that all need to be executed in order for us to achieve the final vision and get a leg up on payment management. So last slide. It is really getting to a vision for payment management. What are the activities? How do they relate to other things that are going on in the department. When we look at pavement management, it's not a function that is stands on its own. It is really related to the projects we select, the materials that we use, how we do maintenance, how we design our roads, the data that's collected, decisions that are being made. It all links together, right? It's not a standalone. And so it has to look at how is it part of this overall system, and how do we document and describe what we do in our asset management plan? How does it tie to our investments? How does it tie into all of our other systems and other decisions that we're making? And so we're really trying to focus on how can we look at this as a future vision for pavement management to improve continuously, to have this culture of continuous improvement, for innovation, for changing our practices and getting a good direction. So that's what we're leaning towards with this work. It's not complete yet. We're still in the process, but we're very excited to see this coming together, and it's making, I think, raising this issue with our executive leadership about how this function has really maybe been a little under-resourced in the past. And we've got very smart, hardworking people who are trying to make the best that we can, but we just, with a little more resources, we could see, I think, a lot of benefits, and we're painting that picture through this work. So hopefully this has been helpful to see a little bit of some of this work. I think the same concept of looking at a strategic planning effort could apply to lots of different assets. And we're looking at maybe using this even for some of our other assets and features that we want to look at, how we can improve how those are managed in the future. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you. If there's any questions, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. That was a great example, kind of a specific way that you guys are looking holistically at workforce development and asset management. So that was great. Okay, we are going to move now into our breakout sessions. And as Hyana mentioned earlier when she was talking through the agenda, we have switched up the format a little bit. So now when you go into your breakout groups, all the facilitators have some areas in the guide that they want to show you. And so we kind of have the answers of where things are located in the guide already ready for you. So you can take a look at where those resources are. And then we really want this to be a conversation. So we have various discussion questions, just to really talk about what challenges you guys are all facing in your organizations. What are ways you've started to overcome those, anything, strategies you found that have worked, other things you're working on now, how you're dealing with change. So your facilitators in the breakout groups will kind of go through all these questions and kind of get some feedback from you all. We also want to know what you want to see as far as future guidance on workforce issues as they relate to TAM. So that'll be another question as well. So just a few logistics before we break up. We will kind of open the breakout rooms and then you'll be asked to join a room. I believe you'll join a room that has the fewer number of people. So hopefully that will kind of get everybody evenly distributed throughout the different breakout rooms. And then you'll have the facilitator there that will kind of lead you through the discussion. We'll come back together and have a little bit of a feedback time on what you all discussed. And then we'll close it out.
Okay. We should have Matt go first, the smarter Matt of the Matt H's.
Yeah, right. That would not be me. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We had a great conversation in our group. We had folks from a number of different state DOTs, including Oregon, Connecticut, New Jersey, South Carolina, Texas, and also Federal Highway Division representative, and had a good conversation. We did a lot of kind of a deep dive on the first set of questions, talking about sort of, what's the right home for asset management? And that's been an issue some organizations have faced in terms of just, maybe it's bounced around a little bit and I think we've seen this in a number of states where maybe asset management started in one area and then over time it kind of evolved to a different area, and every time it moves, a different perspective is put on it, and it kind of disrupts the continuity. And so, looking for information from the guide to help help think about what is the best home for asset management? Where can we put it in a way that it's going to work, and also help make it resilient to some of those games of executive Legos that sometimes get played as things get moved around. So, so we discussed that a bit. One idea that was brought up is, maybe there's a way that we can automate some of the processes. So some of the things that are routine that we have to do, like reporting condition or looking at some of our modeling, if there's ways that we can automate some of that, maybe that would help make us a little more resilient, because it doesn't so dependent on a single person kind of knowing the process, but it's kind of built in a little bit, and allows us to look a little bit more at the decisions we're making rather than kind of trying to figure out the process to how to automate things, or how to how to report things. And then we also talked a little bit about one of the issues that comes up frequently is, as we bring new people on board with asset management and start talking with them about asset management, many times they're kind of adding that to their plate. So in other words, maybe they've got a day job. Their main role is doing something, for example, our colleague from New Jersey was talking about, her work with bridge management is kind of an add-on to what she was already doing to support some of the bridge work. And so that becomes an impediment, really, because we're asking people to kind of add more to their plate, maybe not necessarily giving them those resources. So how do we help kind of onboard folks that are maybe given a part-time role with working on asset management, to not make it an add-on, but to make it a value add? And I think there's potentially some good resources in the guide to talk about recruiting and how to kind of guide people through that a little bit. But I think it ultimately is going to come down to some organizational decisions about how to carve out some of that time and offload some responsibilities to make it so that we can add that in without sort of becoming a takeaway as well. We did talk a little bit about the last one related to turnover. There's a number of organizations that have faced some big challenges with turnover. As folks leave, it does leave some gaps in our org chart. I think that for us, that can kind of cut both ways. I think in some ways we've had some setbacks as we've lost folks, but on the other hand, we now have a maybe group of people who've moved into other roles that bring some of that asset management expertise with them. And I brought up a couple of examples as well related to some of the recent CEO appointments, like, for example, in Maryland, Greg Slater, who had a big, strong background in asset management, is now their CEO and is bringing an asset management perspective to the Maryland Department of Transportation. Similar with the Nebraska DOT, with their new director, John Selmer, who had led asset management activities at Iowa DOT, and so therefore brings that perspective. And so sometimes we're seeing that that turnover, especially as it's heading towards the top of the organization, can maybe bring some benefits along with it in terms of just folks who have kind of come up through the asset management side and now have that experience to lean on as they lead the organization. We didn't really get a lot of time to talk about the second set of questions here, but we did do a little bit of a deep dive on what are some of the needs, and how can the guide be enhanced. Didn't have a lot of specific ideas that came up, but one was, is there a way that we can have some kind of a forum or a way to exchange information? A lot of folks are wrestling with these topics, and it has to be sort of timely. So how do we find the time to connect to the right resources? And there's so much to learn and digest. How do we get quick answers to some of these questions? And how do we be able to connect folks to experts in a quick way so that they can get the information and guidance that they need? So I don't know that we have the answer to that, but that's something that maybe would be a nice value add if we can figure out a way to approach that question. I think that's pretty much summarizes our group. Anything that the rest of the group members like to bring up that I failed to mention?
All right. Thanks, Matt. Hearing none. It's 3:20, so I'm going to keep the conversation going. So up next, we'll do Tammy.
Thanks, Matt. We were group one. So we kind of went through all of the questions. Is this one ours, Yana?
Yes, it is.
So Anne Marie had some good information about when they were having to repopulate, the way she phrased it, with her group, and looking at some specific competencies for the people that you're going to recruit. And that being pretty critical, and looking at probably one of the most critical pieces is somebody that's able to work collaboratively. We did look and consider that your asset management team does need people that have the soft skills as well as the technical skills. A lot of groups have a little bit heavier involvement from civil engineers that have learned the softer skills, but really looking at what should that roadmap for paths to TAM capabilities be. So when we moved into managing change, I think some of the things we were talking about there is really how to work with the various district engineers and in bringing up their level to really understanding the purpose of asset management, how that links to performance, why they might need to be a little more flexible with their way of thinking in identifying projects, whether they're bridge or pavement projects, just so that we know that they can get the performance that they desire. We don't really want to finger point at any particular district that they're bringing the state average down, but really having that conversation with the ones that aren't quite performing to make sure that they're clear about what the overall agency goals are and looking at the change. I think Steve Gay brought up about 1999 when the FHWA and AASHTO first started executing asset management groups within their organizations. And here we are 22 years later, and we still haven't really figured it out. I think one of the things that we determined is none of us are experts in this. We may be a little bit more on the maturity scale within our own organization, but none of us want to claim being a national expert on asset management or performance management. And really looking at least at with FHWA and probably a lot of the DOTs is asset management and performance management may not be co-located with the same person, and looking at some of those challenges. I think one of the other things that we talked about is for some people, asset management became an add-on duty and not a full-time duty. Similar to what Matt Haubrich was saying, is we added more to the plate and we didn't take anything off. And how do we do it? We did talk about whether or not we should consider a certification for TAM. We didn't really want to buy into the asset management agency's certification or endorse that, but looking at whether there's something that we can develop within our community for specifically transportation asset management and some level of certification. How do we make it a desirable career path for somebody within the agency? It seems like we're struggling when it comes to getting pavement management folks to stick around for long periods of time. Bridge seems like they have a different attraction, and how do we get a high level of traction that people want to come into asset management? And I think what we left off with is how do we encourage universities to at least have one course on transportation asset management just to get their feet wet, whether it's a civil engineering class or whether it's a crossover with some of the planning or public administration type of curricula, but just looking at maybe at least just kind of one overview type of course. So I think I'll turn it over to the rest of the group if anybody wanted to bring up something I didn't hit on.
It's good, Tammy. You covered it all.
All right. Thanks, Tammy. So next up, let's do Brad.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, my camera's failing, but I think you can see our group's results. We spent a good bit of time talking about building a program. Once you establish a program, then you need to build out the staff to sustain that program. You can establish the program through some heroic efforts, but then it takes more resources to keep it going. And talked about one of the things that came up there was certification, and this is an emerging area of having some type of qualifications or certification. But what's really important when you're looking for asset management folks is a desire for change. These are folks who should want to implement change, and they need to want to learn. So if you can bring folks in with different skills, and if you have folks who are interested in learning new skills, then you can get them the education that they need. But also talked about needing to bring in folks with some practical experience to help balance that out against some of the data analysis and some of those aspects of the job. We had a couple examples from Connecticut and Pennsylvania of changes that are in place. Connecticut is moving from a timing-based signal replacement program to one based on inspections. So there's a lot of moving pieces to put that in place. And PennDOT is where a lot of states are really incorporating these asset management processes into their planning and programming processes. So having asset management really being a driver of investment decisions and not just about reporting. And then finally, I guess I'll touch on the one opportunity we saw to for the asset management guide to really continue to help states. The case studies were seen as really good and helpful throughout the guide. Adding to those and keeping those up to date so that agencies can see what's going on, the group felt that would be really important. So I'll leave it there, I think.
Great, thanks, Brad. So with a few minutes left, let's go to Hannah, and then we'll go to Gareth.
Sure. So I'll go through these fairly quickly. We had a good kind of range. Folks from California, Connecticut, some FHWA, Utah. In the workforce issues, we definitely heard that there's trouble hiring. So, I think they've had multiple positions open for an extended period of time, kind of struggling to get good candidates. And this is maybe abnormal, with the pandemic, maybe they thought that there would be quite a few people, lots of applications. So that's something they're working through. Let's see. So as far as change goes, we talked a little bit about when there's a new administration and kind of bringing, when there's a change there, bringing that person up to speed with asset management and, ensuring that they're kind of on board, that there's that buy-in. And then resources, areas where we can make the TAM guide better. Folks mentioned additional templates and videos would be helpful. Kind of what asset management is, how it's beneficial, and really these like 2 to 5 minute little short videos would definitely be helpful. And similar to Brad's, kind of more case studies and examples, especially on workforce issues and success stories would be great.
Great, thanks, Hannah. And then last, but certainly not least, Gareth.
So the university level education, Tammy mentioned that, great if there was something more formal there. From a turnover perspective, we were talking about one organization and the potential that turnover came from, within asset management, came from poor role definition. So I think there's some resources in there that can help with that. From a change management perspective, I liked a discussion where we're talking about one data integration process within an agency, and they had a change management meeting every 2 weeks, and those change management said, why are we changing and what are the impacts of the change on others? So a really good solution to change management there. And we had a little celebration of the fact that COVID meant we were doing online training, and that's enabled that to reach out to many more and should continue. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Gareth. Yeah, I just want to emphasize that was like a great nugget from our group, is that idea that some good things came out of COVID, and the idea of we really stepped up the game on sort of online interaction, training, engagement is something that we should carry forward regardless of what happens to our new normal or the ability to travel. So I think we have to keep that, front and center. So thank you to everybody for joining us today. This was number 6. We have 2 more left. The full schedule, you can go to get all this great information at the TAM portal, tam-portal.com, navigate to the webinars, and you can download, sign up for the last 2 webinars. If you missed any of the other 5, you can go and watch those. So next week, next Wednesday, we have the investment strategies and MODA, multi-objective decision analysis. And then the last one, strengthening how data supports your TAM program. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be here for that one. I'll be in the mountains of New Mexico hiking on the 16th, which I'm looking forward to, but I'm sure it'll be a great concluding session, and we'll probably do more of these in the future. If you ever have any questions about this, feel free to contact me, mhardy@ashto.org. I can get you engaged with the AASHTO side. If you're not from a member department, that's okay. We'll still get you engaged in asset management in some way the best we can. NCHRP, TRB, all those places have lots of opportunities to engage. And you can also contact Kiana Park at Spy Pond, or anybody from the Spy Pond team for more information about the TAM guide, the TAM portal website. They are the experts in setting all that stuff up. So with that, thank you very much. Thanks, Hannah, for hosting today. Sorry I was late. Great job. And with that, everybody have a great week. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.